Merry Christmas, Tower Topics fans. I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Top is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about.
Yeah, let's start this Christmas edition off by thanking some of the people we're most thankful for, and that's our Prestige Pass members: Aaron Bort, 330T, Logan Lipper, Brian Hauser, Lil Mac 21, Miss Mandy 1983, Jacob Fix, and Damon Barnes. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the Prestige Pass level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to our videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and some tiers get some free stuff. It's the most wonderful time of the year, Don.
It is. I love Christmas.
I love Christmas too. You got the movies, you got Winterfest nowadays. That's always nice. You know?
It is. It makes it, even more magical this time of year to be able to go to Kings Island for Winterfest.
Yeah, it does. But it's what are some of your, well, obviously, let's be upfront. We don't have much of an agenda today. It's Christmas. Only a couple people will be joining us, and you're the most loyal ones because you're listening on Christmas. So we're just going to kind of talk about it, and we just wanted to deliver, you know, an episode, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that includes Christmas Day. So, one of the things that we kind of never really hit on too hard that maybe we should have is you actually got to visit Kings Island in 1972, the inaugural year. What were some of your thoughts that year? Like, what are your memories?
Well, first of all, Coney Island was a big part of my earliest childhood memories. We lived about 15 minutes from Coney Island. It was the big thing that my family did every year. Other kids would go to Florida, places like that on vacation. We never went to those kind of places. For us, the vacation was going to Coney Island. So it was, we were there every Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. It'd be my brother, my sister, mom and dad, my cousins, Mark and Paul and their parents. But it was what we did. So, you have those earliest childhood memories, and that's what we looked forward to every year. And then in 1971, going to Coney Island, there was all this signage around the park promoting Kings Island. They had a little tent that you could go into, and, it was kind of a preview look at what Kings Island would be. And we were there on the very last night that Coney Island was open. It was Labor Day, September 6th, 1971. And I remember the speech at the end of the night. They came over the PA talking about as Coney was closing that Kings Island would be, beyond anyone's wildest imagination. So we were looking forward to going to Kings Island. We were looking forward what the new park, might be. What we didn't like was the distance. It wasn't just down the street basically from us anymore. It was out. My dad called it out in the boondocks in
Mhm.
Mason, Ohio. We did not like. My dad didn't like the fact that it was $6 to get in. But when you really look back on it, we probably spent more than $6. At Coney Island. Buying the all day wristband and the other things that you had to do there, playing games and that. So um, to take us to the park, it was like $30, for the family. That was a big deal. We didn't came from modest means, so those were the kind of detractors going into it. But we would go by once a month. We'd get in the car. My dad would drive up to where the park was. We'd drive by, look at the construction progress. I can remember the Eiffel Tower, being built. You could look in because Western Row went right by the front gate,
Mhm.
back then, and you could see the fountain, under construction. You could see the buildings on International Street coming together. So that kind of helped build some excitement and things for us, during that time as well. But then it, you know, gets to 1972, and instead of Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, it's one time. So we went that summer. My sister had back surgery, so she was in the hospital. She wasn't going to be able to go. So it was just my brother and I. My brother's 5 at this time, so he's going to spend all the time in Hanna Barbera land. But my cousins went, Mark and Paul, And, uh, you know, we walked through the front gate, and wow, I mean, just we weren't in Kansas anymore, kind of a thing. As beautiful as Coney Island was in my childhood memories, I mean, this was just a whole new world. You know, you've got the Eiffel Tower, you got the Royal Fountain. It wasn't fenced in like it is right now. You didn't have the ID sign and everything in front block. So as soon as you walked in, I mean, you saw the water. You know, you could almost walk up to it. The buildings on International Street, it was, you know, definitely took you into those other places. You know, you had the Spanish building, the Swiss building, the, you know, Italy, all those different countries represented. You had a curb, you know, sidewalk kind of a thing, you know, curb going down International Street. No trees going down International Street. So you had a very clear, you know, view looking at the Eiffel Tower. I remember as we walked into the park, the sky ride going past the Eiffel Tower. Now we'd ridden the sky ride at Coney Island. I loved it. So it was something familiar right off the bat to see that, but just very colorful with the different, you know, the gondolas, what colors they were with the blue, the green, the red, the yellow. So just that memory of walking into the park for the first time and just, you know, being transported into a whole new world was exciting. Action Zone didn't exist at that point in time, so you couldn't come into the park and really go left. You know, everything was just down International Street. So as we make our way down, we get to the end of the Royal Fountain, and you know, we turn left. And the first ride that we came to was their spinning keggers. So that became the first ride that I ever rode at Kings Island. We get off the ride. There's the tumble bug, you know, not too far away. That was from Coney Island. So we rode that. But as we turn the corner and you go into what was then called Coney Island section of the park, not Coney Mall, but Coney Island, some, you know, other rides that were familiar. The Cuddle Up was there. You had the Monster there. The Scrambler was there. So we rode all of those rides that, you know, I had basically grown up with, you know, from the time I was little. But just dominating the Coney Island section was the Racer.
Hmm.
I'd never been on a roller coaster at this point. The last day that Coney Island was open, I did go through the line with my sister to ride the Shooting Star. I was always mesmerized, you know, by it, but was finally tall enough to do it. Went through, gave my ride ticket, and then sat down in the seat. The noise from the train behind, um, you know, kind of freaked me out a little bit. So I wanted to get out. So I got out, didn't ride. My sister did. Um, didn't really think much about that until, you know, years later. That's the biggest regret I would have if someone said, "What's your one, you know, regret in all your years being involved with the amusement theme park industries?" That I didn't ride the Shooting Star when the opportunity was right there in front of me. But anyway, I kept looking at the Racer. My cousin Mark and Paul, you know, they'd rode it multiple times, got off the ride, smiling, laughing, had a great time, kept trying to get me to go on it. I wanted no part of it. So we spent, you know, time walking around the park, doing other things, you know, rode the log flume. That had been at Kings Island. Uh, the KI and Miami Valley Railroad, rode that. And I noticed that the locomotive, you know, they had the blue and the green, rode both of them, but they were much bigger engines than what I had seen at Coney Island with the train there. The train at Coney Island was probably my first big kid ride. That's what my parents told me. That was the first big ride that I went on as a kid. Uh, but those were just, you know, I just remember the sound of the train, you know, and then riding it. There were live actors, you know, a lot of storytelling, you know, with it. So I remember that part of it. The canoe ride, my cousins, Mark and Paul and I, we did the canoe. You see that ride on the Brady Bunch,
Hmm.
that attraction, not a ride, but that attraction on the Brady Bunch. We had lunch in Columbia Palace, with fried chicken. I remember that, you know, very well. Witch's Cauldron was in the Hanna Barbera, you know, area. So did some rides there. The Enchanted Voyage. My dad absolutely loved that. I did too. It was like all your, you know, these cartoon characters that we saw every Saturday on TV.
Yeah.
You know, they're all part of this attraction. I mean, it was just super impressive. So we do that. You know, now we're getting to about 2:33 in the afternoon. Um, we went up in the Eiffel Tower. My dad didn't. My dad was afraid of heights. He didn't want to go up in the Eiffel Tower. So we all went up there, my cousins and I, and just looking out at the park. I kept being, I was drawn to the racer. Watching it go, and it just looked like it would be fun. But I still wanted no part of that. So we come down, and I remember riding like Haley's Comet. Uh, the antique cars, we rode that. There was a Sunshine Turnpike, we rode that. They kept wanting to go back over and ride the racer, and I just still wanted no part of that. So now it's probably about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My cousin says, "Look, I'll give you 50 cents if you ride the racer with me." Well, 50 cents, for a 9-year-old, that was a big deal. I mean, that was what I made for my allowance every week. Cutting the grass, taking out the trash, doing all those I was like, okay, 50 cents, I'll do that. And he was like, "You can buy a hot dog with that." Back then you could buy a hot dog at King's Island for 50 cents. So I thought, okay, I'll do it. Uh, when you came into the entrance of the racer, going through the queues right now, it was a different color, the red. Like the queue was like a little fancy, but it was red.
Yeah.
And we went on the side that is now red. They had a red and blue on each side at that time. So, we're going through, and the queue was about half in the entrance. There was about halfway through. So it was about a 15-20 minute wait to get on it. And as we're going up the ramp, I start getting really nervous about it. I'm thinking about backing out, and no. But you come into the station, and now at that time too, they had a fence that divided the two sides,
Mm-hmm.
and you just didn't come up and pick out your seat. You had to go all. They had another like railing and that going all the way down to like the back of the. You can still see the holes where those were.
Yeah.
So went back to the very back of the station, and then you turned, and then you came back up. So the first seat you would come to would be the backward. I mean, the last seat. The last car. Well, at this time they only had 4 cars per train. It wasn't until 1973 that they added the 5th car. So we sat in the 3rd car, middle seat. I remember that very clearly. And red train. I put my feet up under the seat in front of me, and I was like white knuckling, gripping the lap bars. The train dispatched, and as we came around the turn, up by what was called the Sweet Tooth Restaurant, which is now 21 and over,
21 and colder.
21 and colder. So my dad, my brother, are there. My cousin Mark rode behind me, so I'm with my cousin Paul. And going up the lift, I'm looking out at the park, and it just seemed like that climb took forever. Now, at that time, the Racer, biggest, longest, fastest wooden roller coaster out there. That's how it was built at Coney Island. So that's how they build it. So we get to the top, and I look out, and I just see this beautiful red, white, and blue structure in front of me. You got all the little hills and everything, and then it drops. You go over the hill 2, hill 3, then you go back up the 4th hill. Now that climb up on the 4th hill, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, by today's standards, that seemed like it took forever to get to the top. The air time, wow, never experienced anything like that before. Again, at my first roller coaster, you get to the top, and all of a sudden it splits.
Mm-hmm.
That side goes this way, my side went this way, and came back into the station, and I was just blown away by how much fun that was. It was life changing. Now I'm a roller coaster fan. I got to do this again. So that day, pretty much most of the rest of the day, my cousin Paul and I, and occasionally I would ride with Mark, but I rode it 9 times that day. And I remember my first night ride on the Racer was on the other side, which is now, the blue side. And it just felt odd, because I'd ridden the first several times on the side that's now red, and then to go onto that side, and it just felt a little bit different now, but just thrilling again. I couldn't believe how much fun this was to ride roller coasters, especially at night. So I was hooked, And that's what I remember mostly about my first visit to Kings Island in 1972 was, the racer, the Enchanted Voyage, just how mesmerizing, everything was when I, walked. It was just, everything was beautiful. The park wasn't completely built, yet at this time. There were still, you couldn't go, there wasn't the La Roses in Rivertown, wasn't there. Obviously, the Beast wasn't there. So it wasn't, as big as it is today. Uh, but I mean, at that point in time, I mean, I was going to be a Kings Island fan for life. I couldn't wait to go back. Every year. I remember there was a couple months after my visit when they went around in my class at Summit Elementary School. What did everybody do this summer? What was the most fun thing you did? Where'd you go? I mean, I just raved about Kings Island. I remember talking about that. Was talking about the racer. How many times I rode it? I'm in fourth grade. Talking to everybody about the Kings Island and the racer, and it just really started. I guess the word would be the love affair that I had with Kings Island was from that first visit in 1972, and you know, there was no way at that time, to know that 10 years later, or 9 seasons later, 10 years, 9 years, 10 years later, whatever, in 1981, that I was going to become that well connected with Kings Island. Starting the journey, riding the racer all those times, and then eventually going on to work there for 17 seasons, and then on to continuing to be involved with it. The things that as a journalist with Theme Parks by Dawn, the things you and I do here with Tower Topics,
Yeah.
and just how much of a fabric of my life Kings Island would become, or that association that I would have with the racer, starting in 1981. Just at that first visit, you don't think about those kind of things, how woven into the fabric of your life it's going to become. But uh, my childhood memories, it's Coney Island, it's Kings Island, and it's playing sports. That's there's not a childhood memory that doesn't have one of those three things in it, really. But that first visit, special day, and it stands out to me like it was yesterday. And it's weird, how things like that. There's certain things, when you're that age. Again, I was 9, and you just remember things uh, that stand out, and it feels like it was yesterday. Now, you asked me who my teacher was in fourth grade. I don't remember. I don't know. Can you name some of the kids in your class? Maybe one, maybe two. I don't know. Those kind of things. I guess it's things that matter to you. Kind of remember. Maybe I don't know, but I still remember that day. Clear as day.
Yeah, it's those memories that stick with you. I mean, everybody remembers their first fit. Well, I mean, I guess there's some people that have been going since they're in a stroller and it's always been a part of their life. But if you are any kind of measurable person for your
Yeah,
first
my
visit,
first King. I remember my first Coney Island visit. I'm in a stroller.
yeah,
And they took me on the train. There's a picture of me on the train when I was like 2. So but I'm glad that there's not a lot of depth to my life. I mean, it is sports, it is theme parks, and that's what my life has been about. And those childhood memories, special, and I'll never forget that first visit.
yeah, very cool. Well, speaking of your story, we'll be right back with your stories. Okay, today's story comes from. Well, you're going to read this one.
Yes, it comes from Marty B from Sydney, Ohio. He said, "The first time I rode the Beast at Kings Island is a memory forever etched in my mind. I remember standing in line, feeling a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. I can identify with that. As a wooden structure loomed ahead, its sheer size and mystery were both thrilling and intimidating. When I finally boarded the train and pulled the lap bar down, I could feel the sense of energy, the riot around me. As we ascended the lift hill, I looked out over the park to my left and the endless sea of green treetops, realizing I was about to plunge into something unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The first drop was a rush of adrenaline, plunging me through a tunnel and into the woods. The ride was relentless, a symphony of sharp turns, long tunnels, and double helix finale. I remember gripping the lap bar tightly, laughing, screaming, and marveling at how it seemed to go on forever, each section feeling more intense than the last. When we rolled back into the station, my heart was racing, my face flushed with exhilaration. I knew immediately that I had just experienced something extraordinary. That first ride sparked a lifelong love for one of the greatest wooden roller coasters ever built, a love that grows stronger with every visit to Kings Island. I remember my first ride on the Beast, and I don't know how you forget that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember my first ride. I remember my first ride on the Vortex, on the Racer, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, fantastic story. It's you know, the Beast. As I was growing up, and my first visit to the park was in the early '90s. The Beast was still like the biggest, baddest ride, but it was something that had been
Hmm.
there for a long time at that point. You know, we're talking about
Hmm.
15 or so years. So we just, I grew up always knowing that Kings Island had the world's longest wooden roller coaster. Uh,
Yeah, I remember when it was announced under construction, the anticipation, for it. Now, I was not an experienced roller coaster rider when I first rode it for the first time. I had, been on the Racer. I had then been on, which was the Scooby Doo at that point in time
mhm.
at Kings Island, the Galaxy roller coaster at Kings Island. I had been to Americana and rode the Screeching Eagle, which was called the Rocket, back then. That was my uh, roller coaster. Well, one more was the Screaming Demon. That was the first time I ever went upside down on a coaster. So that was my limit. I didn't even have 10 roller coaster credits yet. The first time I rode the Beast. So uh, yeah, I mean that was memorable for me too. And there's so much about this story that I can relate to, and Marty's going to, like you said, his love for the ride just goes stronger, over and over again, which is music to my ears because sometimes, the older, now we don't know when Marty first rode this. It could have been last week for all we know, but,
Right. Mhm.
um, it's sometimes these new rides come out and you forget about the old ones, and you look at the Beast. Oh, they should RMC it. You see a lot of that kind of stuff now. So this is refreshing, a refreshing take for me to hear this story that every time he rides it, his love for the ride just grows stronger.
Lovely. All right. If you want to submit your stories, then why don't you ship them off to Don? He'll take care of them. Don Helbig at themeparksbydon.com is where to send them. In the subject, please add story for TT so we can keep them organized. So we'd love to hear your stories, your first visit. Did you meet your girlfriend, the love of your life, your ex-wife, whatever. We want to hear your stories. So send them to Don Helbig at themeparksbydon.com and use the subject story for TT. We'll be back with the listener questions. Okay. First listener question. This one is from Tony P from Columbus, Ohio. And he said, should instant goose technique be legal in regulation tournament duck duck goose play? I'll let you start, Don.
Well, I think when choosing goose, the technique keeps the chosen player from fully preparing to chase, increasing your chances of winning the round. It's a fun way to add a bit of speed and surprise to the game. Uh, but I'm one of those, people that I think, we're talking about tournament play here. I think whatever rules you played by pre-tournament, I think those rules need to carry over. So if you were able to use this, um, you know, um, the instant goose during non-tournament play, you should be able to still use it in tournament play.
Right. Now, the only caveat that I can think of is if we're talking about North American rules versus European rules, because with European rules, you get the designated goose as well. And that might cause friction with this instant goose because you run the risk of having two gooses and two ducks in a four-player situation.
Yeah,
Cool. But
yeah, but yeah, thanks for the question there.
yeah, Don, you've got the next one.
Yeah, Andy from Cincinnati, Ohio, he says, "Will we ever see Kings Island change the shed theming on Mystic Timbers to match um, Winterfest? For example, they could change the music to a holiday tune or change the animation in the to the like the Abominable Snowman. Uh, love the show. Keep up the great work." Well, thanks for listening, Andy. Ryan, what are your
Well,
thoughts?
ever is a very long time. We always have to caveat with that. I feel like if they were going to do it, they would have done it the first year.
I agree. It's not that easy to do it. I mean, you don't have a lot of time between the end of Halloween Haunt and the start of Winterfest to be able to do that. It'd be great, if they did. But there's a lot of costs and things involved with that. So I would say we won't see that for any time in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, no, they do decorate in there, and that's nice. But I always kind of envisioned, especially when I think Winterfest and Mystic made their debut the same year. I assumed that they were going to do something like that. I thought that was the plan, but they didn't. Uh, Now, if they did do that, they could market it as a new attraction. But if they can't market as a new attraction, it would be wasting money, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah. But maybe they can just change up the music. I think that would be an easy fix.
Well, honestly, if they're gonna, I mean, changing up the I don't know what kind of technology goes into it. I know that the screens are Christie projectors, probably off a bright sign player. And theoretically, if you get some techie guy in
Yeah.
there, they can just change the video out. I assume that's
Well,
easy.
you get away from the backstory too a little bit, though. I think if you try to make it more like Winterfest themed in the shed, you kind of lose the backstory a
Yeah,
little
but what
bit.
about Flight of Cheer? How Flight of Fury is that? Where are the aliens? Okay.
All right, I
Yeah,
got you.
okay. I won. Yes. Okay. Next question. Wesley W. from New Richmond, Ohio. He said, which decade of Kings Island do you prefer? 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, or today?
Well, for me, my favorite time, most memorable time, was the 1980s.
Hmm.
And I was there pretty much almost every day, a lot of years. Riding the race, riding the beast, watching shows. Made a lot of friendships, from people that worked at the park, members of the American Coaster enthusiast. Made a lot of connections in the industry, at the park and in the industry that decade. So for me, um, that decade's going to always stand out. Is it a better product in the 80s than it is today? I don't think so. I think the product at Kings Island today overall is better than it ever has been. But I'm going to go with the 1980s.
Cool. Yeah, I would say the 2008 through 2014-ish era is my favorite because that was when the park had substantial growth, between adding Diamondback and the Knievel stuff and Banshee and all that. It was a great time to be a Kings Island fan. I know that's not exactly answering the question, but that's my favorite time period in my experience with the park.
Okay. Next question comes from Deborah B., Westchester, Ohio. This is for you, Ryan.
Okay.
She says, Ryan S., Apple Music or Spotify?
I mean, if you're asking me which one I use Apple Music, and it's tied into my Apple One service that includes Apple Music, games, or sorry, Apple Arcade, iCloud. I feel like something else, but I can't think of. Uh, Nonetheless, I've never had Spotify before. I do have Spotify downloaded. I check the podcast on there to make sure that it goes through. I mean, I got all the apps that we upload to. I know that it goes to like other ones, but thing I like about Spotify, at least because my only experience with them is podcasts. I've never really listened to music on Spotify, although I'm in the minority. That's the biggest app in the United States for music. But I've noticed that when I upload Tower Topics or Attractions Group or whatever, it hits Spotify so much faster than it hits Apple Podcasts. So that's one upside to them. If you've got Apple stuff, if you use CarPlay and all that, you got to use Apple Music. The integration's just there. Cool. I
All
didn't
right.
expect that one. T-shirts, Don. T-shirts.
T shirts are available. Tower Topics. They come in a Carolina blue. If you're interested in one, just $22. That includes shipping. you can message us on our X, which is tower underscore topics. And that's the reason why you want to also follow us on X, not only to be able to send us messages in that, but also just for, Kings Island news notes and other information and things about the show. Or you can email me at Don Helbig at Tower Topics. Oh, wait a minute, not Don Helbig at Tower Topics.
No,
Don
no.
Helbig at themeparksbydon.com. And, we'll send you that QR code. And once the transaction goes through, it only takes a matter of days to get your shirt.
I feel like we should have Tower Topics email addresses. We're almost to that point. We do have towertopics.com, which just kind of redirects you to the link tree for all the episodes, but we'll get to that point. We also we're going to be coming out with more merchandise and stuff instead of one item at a time. So we're going to need like a landing page where you can at least look at everything that we have available. But yeah,
Yeah, Ryan, anymore when we go to King, you talk about like a Tower Topics email and stuff. Um, every time I go to Kings Island, there's people coming up to me, letting me know how much they enjoy listening to Tower Topics. They'll give suggestions on things they'd like to see as one of the topics that we discuss. We've used a lot of those that uh, been mentioned to me, and I'm sure Ryan, you get the same thing now when you go. People are coming up to you talking about the show.
yeah, the people seem to believe that my name is Tower Topics. They say, "Hey, Tower Topic." Now, I have to admit that when I ran into Taylor from Coaster Studios there several years ago, I distinctly remember going up to him and going "Hey, Coaster Studios," and I meant "Hey, I recognize you from Coaster Studios," but that was the first thing. That's probably what people do, but I mean, I appreciate.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
I've made it very clear my stance with this. I'm definitely not in this to try to find relevancy, nor are you in this to try to stay relevant. I enjoy doing the show. I couldn't care less about it. So
It's so much fun. We're both passionate about Kings Island, and anybody that's so many Kings Island fans are just as passionate about it, like we are. And I think this has just become a good platform, for us to try to, like we said, the show's for Kings Island fans, and just kind of share the stories that we have about the park. And as we come up with different things that are, maybe it's a new event or it's a returning event, just different things that happen, and being able to talk about it. And love seeing the comments on our YouTube, after we do these episodes where people are sharing their experience or giving their thoughts. But if you see Ryan in the park, or you see me in the park, um, and you have ideas that you'd like to see for upcoming episodes, let us know. Tell us what you like about the show. Tell us what maybe you don't like about the show. But we love talking about Kings Island with anybody that wants to talk Kings Island with us.
absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Hey, Merry Christmas, everybody, by the way. I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.